What are some ways do you see that they could be engaged?
They could attend council meetings. They could hold us accountable.
Oh, okay.
Hold us accountable. If I knocked on your door and I sat in your living room and I told you I was going to do X, Y, and Z, I need you to hold me accountable.
Hey, welcome to the Elected and Engaged podcast. I'm Mayor Derrick Wood, and we are your voice for local government. This podcast is to bring local government into your front rooms where you hear from some of the brightest minds in local politics. Today is no different. We have somebody who represents the people in her community, and she's been doing it for a long time. The councilwoman who says, I am the people. Miss Shireka McCarthy. Give us some love. Welcome to the Elected and Engaged podcast.
Good evening.
Listen, tell us a little bit, and the people who don't know you, the millions of people watching around the world, tell them a little bit of your backstory and how you really started getting engaged.
Okay. Well, hello everybody that's watching. My name is Shireka McCarthy. I really started to get engaged with politics during graduate school. I was in graduate school. I was taking a social policy class, and I wasn't really doing well. I just couldn't grasp the concepts, right? And so I had a project, and I said, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put on a performance for my teacher so I can get a good grade. And, I thought that would work. So I called up my uncle. He's a DJ. I said, hey, I need a song about teenage pregnancy. And he said, that's easy. Brenda's got a baby. I listened to that song, and I mean, it changed my life.
Wow.
It changed my life. It really broke down how social policy happens and systematic oppression. And honestly, since then, I started to just listen to the local elected officials. I started to listen to what was happening at the federal level, whether it be on social media or the news. I would tune in. I would go to any meetings I could. And that's really how I started to get engaged.
Well, what school did you go to?
Howard University.
Howard University, HU.
You know.
So what were you studying at Howard?
At Howard, I studied social work.
So you study social work. So you
Yes.
were already really getting into another level of social work when you got elected.
Yeah, and so in the social work arena, there are two tracks that you can go. You can go direct practice, where you're working with individuals directly, and then you can do community administration and policy, right? And even though I was a direct practice major, my electives were always in CAP, what we call a CAP. And so I took women in politics, I took social policy courses and things like that. And that's what really got me rooted in wanting to make a difference in the community.
Who were the ones you looked up to back then, or who are the ones that you inspired that you saw yourself in?
So when I very first got into social work, I had a teacher at my high school, and everybody loved her. She was involved in everything. And I'm just like, who is this woman? And it come to find out that she was a social worker. And she just was working with the child development courses at the school. And so she was an inspiration. There were other people, Ron Dellums, inspiration. And then a couple people locally who I think I looked up to. Of course, Shirley Chisholm is always going to be one of those big names that you look up to because she did it first and, made me think that I could do it too.
Wow. So are you in the city governed that you grew up, born and raised all your life?
So I grew up a little bit down the street from where I live now, about 10 minutes down the street. But a very similar community. Very similar.
Which community?
So I grew up in Glenarden, and right now I govern in the city of Seat Pleasant.
Tell us a little bit about Seat Pleasant.
So Seat Pleasant is a small city, a little less than 5,000 residents, predominantly African American. It's a very urban area, city life, really family oriented. People, who've known each other their whole lives, live in that community, grew up in that community.
Wow. And so graduating Howard University, you kind of went into social work right out of college?
Right out of college, I went into social work. I did. I bounced around for maybe 2 years, and then I found my calling and child welfare. And so that's what I've been doing ever since.
Wow. So how did you start getting engaged in seat pleasant politics?
So I actually, after that social policy class at Howard, I started attending the city council meetings.
Oh.
And my very first council meeting that I went to, the at-large member, my predecessor, stood up and resigned. At the very first meeting I attended, I was like, if that's not a sign, what is? And so I went for the appointment for his position, and I was unsuccessful. But that was also an election year, so the appointment was only for about 2 months, and then the election came in that September, and I ran that September, and I won.
Wow. On your first time. So you've been elected. What year was that?
That was 2016.
2016. So you won a special election?
It was a regular election.
Oh, it was a regular
It was a
election.
regular election, which is why the appointment didn't mean much because it was only for a few months.
At this point, studying social work, how did you know what a council person did?
So, because there were social policy courses and we talked about policy that affects the person as a whole, I kind of had an idea. Growing up, I didn't know much about politics. Just knew about the president, right? I didn't know about local politics. But after taking those social policy courses at Howard, I learned about local government.
What do you think is the biggest difference between local government and the president?
So that local government that really touches the people. Everything you do in there will affect every person in your community. You may not ever meet the president while they're in office, but you're going to meet your council member, your neighbor down the street.
So if you can describe in plain language what a council person does in your city, what would be their job description?
So our main goal is to be a legislator. We create legislation, which is simply laws. We create laws for the cities, policies for the cities. We create the budget for the city. But that's just a small portion, right? The bigger part is we're there for our residents, constituent services. Whatever my residents need, I'm there for them. Everything from just needing somebody to talk to or having issues with different government agencies. We just assist them in any way possible.
So do you feel like all of your citizens know about this level of availability with local government? Do you guys get a lot of headlines in the newspapers and the local media and stuff like
I don't
that?
think we do, unless there's something wrong.
Oh.
We don't get headlines in the newspaper. Nobody comes out when the police are doing community walks just to get to know the neighbors, right? But if there's a complaint against the police, then the news is right there. Nobody comes out when we establish new programs and policies that are going to help the residents. But if there's a scandal with the mayor, they're right there.
So local government, what do you think needs to happen for local government to be seen in a bigger light?
I think there needs to be a lot more engagement. I love the idea of this being elected and engaged, right? Because there are a lot of people who are elected, but not everybody is engaged. Not everybody is talking to their citizens. I was just outdoor knocking yesterday, and I met a woman, and she says, I only see the politicians when it's time for reelection. I never see them in between time. And that really hurt my heart. It really hurt my heart because I tried my best to get out and meet everybody.
What do you think the elected officials can do, in your opinion, to be more engaged?
There are a lot of things they could do. They could do newsletters, they could do mail, they could do social media, and they can honestly, the same way they knock on doors when they want to vote, they can knock on doors and say, hey, we have an upcoming meeting. Why don't you attend? You can be my special guest.
And what role do the community play in being engaged?
So the community plays a large role in being engaged, right? Because we can give them as much information as we want to, but they have to be willing to receive it.
What are some ways that you think they should be engaged?
I think they should attend the meetings so they know how their tax dollars are being spent and how their government is being ran. They should vote
Oh,
so that they can have a say in who the people are that are running their government.
Is there a big gap between those who vote for the president and those who vote for council?
I think so. I think so. During election time, we know data is important, and so I look at the data and I look at the number of people who actually vote and the number of citizens that we have in our local elections, and it's It's not even close to the amount of people who come out during the primary and the general for president.
With you saying it being the closest to the people, why do you think people really don't get engaged?
Well, some people don't even know where, that they live in a municipality. In my county, there's 27 municipalities, and there's a lot of unincorporated areas. And so my community, in particular, the city of Sea Pleasant, we share a zip code with two other municipalities. And so unless you're looking at your tax bill, some people don't even know they live in a municipality.
So when they're registered to vote, they don't even know they have a mayor or city council people.
Right?
How can we do better?
I think education, campaigns around education, right? Just how we campaign about ourselves to get ourselves elected, there should be campaigns about attending council meetings, campaigns about learning your government. Because I think when people are more involved, they care more. When they have a stake at what's happening, they care more.
It's true. What have been some of your biggest accomplishments over the last 8 years? Being elected.
So there have been a lot of accomplishments. I will say the very last thing that I did, I established the very first social work intern program in my city. And so although my city is in Prince George's County, Maryland, that is a very wealthy African American county, unfortunately my city historically has not been very wealthy. The median household income has not been very high. And so what I did was I wanted to bring a social worker on to help with the needs of the community. Somebody might be behind on rent. Somebody might be behind on mortgage. Somebody might need help with their elderly parent. Things like that. And so this social worker is going to create a resource directory with all of local resources to give out to the community when they need help. So they can call up to City Hall and say, hey, I've been struggling with homelessness. I used to live in your community. Where can I go to take a shower? And we can look right in the resource directory and tell them where they can go to take a shower.
Wow, that's man. How long have you had that implemented?
So this is very new. It's only about the second week.
Okay.
It's very new. It's only the second week. But we were able to get a student, a recent graduate from Howard University, PhD in social work, who actually studied women in politics.
This is a perfect transition. How important is it for we're seeing a rising number of women get involved in politics, both on the local and the national stage? But how important do you think it is for women to now be more involved in the local politics?
It's very important. It's important because everybody needs representation, right? A man is not going to think how I think. He may be a good politician, he may be a good lawmaker, but he's not going to think how I think. He's not going to have the same perspective as me. And I want somebody that represents me, which is why I got involved, because when I went to my local council meeting, there was not a young person, a young homeowner like me.
The youth, how do we now, I mean, what are you seeing as far as youth is concerned, as far as their level of engagement in local government or their level of wanting to get elected?
They're very much engaged. So I'm actually a member of the Young Elected Officials Network,
Okay.
which is a national organization that works to help get young people elected and maintain, office. And we just had our national convening last month, and it was a wonderful experience to see people, all ages, under 40, right? So there were people who were there who might have been 21, people who were 35, but they were all elected from everything from school board to city council, mayors. There was even some state representatives there. And, you're seeing an uptick in those people wanting to be engaged and elected.
What does it take to be elected on the local level? What is the process? People, everybody say the process is different, but what did it had taken for you outside of being appointed? And now I know you say you're actually up for reelection now. So what is that process so people understand?
So, to actually get your name on the ballot, you have to get a petition of residents in the neighborhood, a certain number of residents in the neighborhood to sign to say that, hey, we want you to go on the ballot. And then you have to turn in a couple other documents, financial disclosure documents, You have to get it notarized. That's just the basic, right? The basic thing to get you on the ballot. After that, you've got to be dedicated. You've got to be somebody that truly cares about the community. The moment your name is on that ballot, people are going to come to you with their problems, their concerns, and things that affect their livelihood. And it takes dedication and a caring heart to run for office.
What does it take to really get somebody to vote for you? I know on the national stage we hear about this billions of dollars being spent on this presidential election. Does it take millions of dollars to run on the local level?
It definitely doesn't take millions of dollars. I'd say maybe a couple thousand. You've got to get yard signs, you've got to get posters, you've got to get palm cards, T-shirts, things like that.
So money does play a role in the
Money
election.
plays a role.
Do your citizens come along and contribute? Like, how do you boost the volunteers, or is this just a one man show?
So, thankfully, this go around is not a one man show. I am supported by family. I am supported by a couple community leaders who are helping me to get elected. Uh, but like I said, that dedication piece is very time consuming. I'd say you go out and you knock on doors and you talk to people. You sit in their living room and you hear their problems, their concerns. They really pour their heart out to you because they want change.
Yeah.
They want someone that's going to fight for them when they can't fight for themselves. And so it really takes a lot.
What you think has been your biggest challenge as an elected official?
My biggest challenge is the things that are outside of my control. So, for instance, my city doesn't have zoning authority, and everybody wants a grocery store. I can't make a grocery store come in my city. You know, I can work on legislation that can give incentives, but I can't make them come. I don't have control over the how grocery stores feel about coming to my community. They're looking at education attainment. They're looking at household income. They're looking at all of these things when they're considering coming into your community as a business.
Density.
And I have no control over that. And it really hurts my heart because I know my residents want so badly to have that grocery store. They want so badly to have, different type of retail stores, right? But I have no control over that.
Seat Pleasant has some notable names that come out there that comes in the news. We've heard Seat Pleasant on the national stage. You got some famous people or some celebrities out of Seat Pleasant?
Yes. So, Kevin Durant,
He's in the Olympics. Oh.
he is in the Olympics. He grew up playing basketball right at our activity center. Yeah,
Wow.
and he's giving back to the community a lot. We have the Durant room at the activity center. And so we're so grateful for people like him.
What has been your big tagline over these 6 years? I know I started to show off, but tell us about your
So
tagline.
I am the people. When I first ran for election in 2016, there was a council member who had been elected since I was in kindergarten, and he was running for reelection, and his tagline was representation for the people. Well, I need somebody who's like me, somebody who's been on my side of things, right? Because when you're elected, things are different. You're treated differently in the community, and you're held to a different standard. I needed somebody who was just like me. And I want people to know I am the people. I'm just like you. I work. I care about my community. I'm a homeowner. I'm just like you. And so that's why I am the people is my tagline.
For people watching Elected and Engaged, why should they either get engaged in local politics or why should they raise their hand and ask to be elected?
I think people should get engaged because all politics affect you, especially local politics. People should run for office because there needs to be more representation. There needs to be somebody that represents every factor in the community: women, young people, men. Every population needs to be represented.
What are some ways that, if they don't want to get elected, what are some ways do you see that they could be engaged?
They could attend council meetings. They could hold us accountable.
Oh, okay.
Hold us accountable. If I knocked on your door and I sat in your living room and I told you I was going to do X, Y, and Z, I need you to hold me accountable.
So how can they hold you? They just show up to the council meeting and say, "Hey, you said you was the people, and you said you was gonna get me a third trash day. I ain't got my third trash day."
That's exactly what they can do. And they can continue to share their concerns. Because I only know what I know. You know, if I'm hearing 10 people tell me that I'm doing a good job, but there's that one person who thinks that I'm not doing a good job, if I don't hear from that one person, I think I'm doing a good job.
What does the future look like for you? You know, where do you see yourself at 6 years from now? And if you can have whatever you want to get accomplished outside of your constraints, what would you have accomplished in the
So I
next?
would like to have this social work intern program be permanent. I would like for this social worker to be able to ride along with the police, and to answer calls for like mental health concerns. I would like for them to answer the calls when there's an issue of loitering for homelessness.
Mm.
Um, I would like to see more healthy food options in my community. I would like to see, we have one gym. I'd like to see another gym, a yoga studio, something like that. And so I'm looking for at legislation right now for tax incentives for healthy businesses, whether it's a gym, yoga studio, grocery store, corner store that sells milk and eggs. I'm also, hopefully in the future looking towards legislation for vacant properties, creating some accountability for people who own properties in my community that don't keep them up.
No, it's interesting. So I got a call today. Lady said, neighbor's house ain't been cut in about 6 months. She see rats coming in the door, scared they're gonna start chewing through. She think it's a dead body in there, and she's like, "What are we gonna do about this house?" Type of situation. So,
And so my hope is that we make them pay, right? If you're not going to come out and cut the grass, we'll cut it for you, but you're going to pay the workers, right? If we have to board the house up because people are living in the house illegally, you're going to have to pay for it. You're going to have to do your part like every resident in the community.
some people say then you're over legislating the community and get mad at you and say, "Government."
We hear it all the time, but we live here. And that didn't come from me. That came from my residents telling me do something about it.
This is what the people wanted. So, you know, the laws and the policies that you make generally come from.
They come from the people. They come from the people.
So the people actually come to the council meetings and say, "Hey, you need to make this a law," and you just snap your fingers and it becomes law.
That's not how it happens.
Oh, okay.
They will call me, send me a message on Instagram, a message on Facebook, and say, I'm having this issue. And I'll take it back to my staff and we'll work together to come up with a solution. And because I am a legislator, my solution is 9 times out of 10 going to be legislation. It's going to be a law.
Does your mayor have veto power?
Our mayor does have veto power.
He or she could say, "I don't want to see that" type of situation.
Yep, the mayor can say I don't like it, and he can veto it, and then we'd have to come back with a super majority.
Is there a public hearing?
It doesn't have to be. Or what we can do is I have a great relationship with my current mayor. I can work with him and say, hey, what didn't you like about it? How can we fix this to make it something that we both like so we both win?
Who was significantly in helping you be successful? Were there mentors that came along that helped you along your journey, or once you got elected, you was like a student of your own, or did you have mentors?
Well, when I got elected, I met a few community leaders, some former elected officials who kind of took me under their wings. And, I called them after a rough council meeting. I call them when when I'm not sure about how I feel about certain legislation. After I've talked to the residents, I'll tell them this is what the residents are saying. This is how I feel about it. What do you think? And they've truly supported me. They've helped me in my campaigns, helped me figure out, where to get my yard signs from and, what type of palm cards I need. They've just been very supportive. And these are, like I said, former elected officials in the community, current community leaders, just people who truly care about the community.
Wow. How important do you think that was in your success?
That was very important in my success. Very important. When I first got elected, I felt somewhat alone. I did have a group of people who I ran with in my first term. And, as time went on, sometimes we had differing opinions. And So I didn't always have somebody that I could go to that saw my perspective. And being the youngest elected official in the history of my city, I thought differently about a lot of things. And so, being able to have those mentors and my colleagues in the Maryland Municipal League who are also young elected officials, having those colleagues to be able to talk things out with was a great help.
What role, you being a social worker, I can't end this without talking about the mental health aspect, elected officials and their mental health, because they got people coming at them every day, every which way. How can an elected official really tune into their mental health and take care of themselves?
Listen to your body. Your body is going to tell you what you need to know. Your body's going to tell you when you need to slow down. Your body's going to tell you when you're not getting enough sleep, when you need to eat. Just today I was out knocking on doors and I'm like, I didn't even eat. And I said, wait a minute. I started to feel a little bad, so I said, let me eat something. And I think I'm a proponent for therapy. I'm always going to say you can have Jesus and therapy. And so, I go to church and I go to therapy every week. And those are two things that I do to help maintain my mental health. Your physical health, if you have a cold, right, you're more inclined to take medicine. You're more inclined to eat some soup, take a nap, because it's a physical thing happening to you, right? But when it's your mental health and it's in your brain, people tend to neglect that because they can't see it. It's not like a runny nose. It's not like a fever. You have to treat it differently. And so I think people tend to neglect it and put it to the side because it's not a tangible thing. But I say your mental health affects your physical health. And the better your mental health, the better your physical health will be.
This has been, I think, very enlightening. What other piece of advice would you want to give to the elected and engaged audience? Talk to them and tell them, give them that lasting piece of advice that they can chew on.
Yes, my advice to individuals that are elected and engaged is have some integrity. Everything you do matters, right? Your residents, your community are counting on you. Show empathy. Do what's in the best interest of the residents. Politics shouldn't be just about how much and how many, but it should be about the right thing.
That's heavy. How can people get in contact with you? Tell them all the ways they can stay connected and to be able to follow your journey and support you.
Sure. The best way to follow my journey and support me is on Instagram at iamthepeople.seatpleasant. I can also be reached for campaign purposes at www.mccarthyatlarge.com. And that's the best way to reach me.
iamthepeople.seatpleasant. All right. What a name. What a powerful name. Hey, listen, you've been watching Elected and Engaged podcast. I'm Mayor Derrick Wood. We are your voice for local leadership. If you've been really enjoying this episode, share it. Make sure you comment. Tell Miss McCarthy how much or what were the things that really inspired and stood out. Make sure you tag a friend who you think needs to hear this episode because you want them to get elected and engaged. And more importantly, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And we'll see you next time on the Elected and Engaged podcast.